I am 100% in favor of immigrants' rights. I think every undocumented immigrant in the United States should immediately be given citizenship. The campaign against undocumented workers is bigoted and awful. Anti-immigrant bigotry is horrendous. And this idea that immigrants are to blame for our problems in the United States is absurd. This idea that a crackdown on immigrants is going to somehow protect us from crime is ridiculous, because the more the immigrant community is living in the shadows, the more afraid they are to call the police, the stronger groups like MS-13 are going to become. And in fact, a lot of what MS-13 does is smuggle people into the country. So if you make it harder for people to legally get into the country, MS-13 is going to make a lot of money illegally smuggling people in. So I am not in favor of an immigration crackdown. I am for full legalization of all the immigrant folks that are already here. I am in favor of giving citizenship to the DACA kids. I am not an anti-immigrant bigot. But open borders is not a good slogan. Every country in the world has borders. Okay? Socialist countries have borders. Capitalist countries have borders. And open borders sounds nuts. What does open borders mean? Now, to most people, when they hear open borders, what they think is, okay, so we're just gonna let anyone walk in, right? Anyone can just walk over the border from Canada and Mexico, and they think all the drug dealers, all the terrorists are all just gonna walk in, and we're not gonna stop them, right? Now, I think what people who are communists and leftists mean when they say open borders is they want to get to communism, right? They want to get to the stateless, classless world that's the ultimate vision that Karl Marx intended, where there's so much material abundance, the need for things like police and military and borders fades away gradually. That's what they mean, I'm sure. But when you say open borders, to most people, you sound nuts. The same with prison abolition. You sound nuts, right? They're like, oh, we're just going to let all the pedophiles and murderers and rapists get out. Well, what you mean is we're going to eventually get to communism where we won't need prisons. But to most people, prison abolition sounds like, oh, just let everyone out. Just let all the axe murderers and rapists and pedophiles, let them all. It sounds nuts, right? And this is a problem that the left has. They come up with these slogans that sound nuts to average people. Open borders sounds nuts, okay? I am totally in favor of legalization of all the undocumented workers in the United States. I am totally opposed to an immigration crackdown. I am opposed to Trump's wall. I am opposed to ICE and what they're doing right now, separating families, horrendous stuff. But don't use the slogan open borders because it sounds nuts, okay? And I'm sorry if that offends you, right? I'm not trying to win points with the woke crowd, okay? I'm out of the movement to the masses. Okay? I'm not trying to get woke points. Okay? I'm trying to actually convince people that socialism is the answer. Okay? So, I'm sorry if me telling you to stop saying open borders isn't woke enough for you. Okay? And you're so much more woke than me. Look in the mirror and masturbate at your own image about how woke you yourself are. I'm telling you that if you keep saying open borders, people that are not already on the left and people that are not already part of the woke movement or whatever, are going to look at you and you look nuts. Now, the same with abolish prisons. Again, I would like to get to a society in which there are no prisons. However, prior to that, I would like us to have socialism and imprison all the billionaires and bankers and imperialists and warmongers. So, we're going to have a place to put those folks after we have socialism, aren't we? And I think it's going to be a prison. So, yes, in the long term, I want to abolish prisons. In the long term, I want to abolish borders, sure. But it's not a good slogan. Unless people are already Marxists and communists, you sound nuts. And I'm sorry if that doesn't impress you. But it's the truth. Socialist countries have prisons. Socialist countries have borders. And until we get to full communism, we're going to have prisons. We're going to have borders. Okay? I'm just being realistic here. So there you go. Open borders is not a good slogan. And honestly, okay, the immigration conversation needs to change. Needs to change, okay? The immigration conversation needs to change, okay? Here's the thing. There are millions of people who are desperately poor because of capitalism. The United States has imposed free market neoliberalism on Honduras at the barrel of a gun. Right? They overthrew Manuel Zelaya and installed a right-wing extremist regime in Honduras. They overthrew, for decades, military dictatorships, Rios Montt in Guatemala. They've done horrendous things, right? They've done horrendous things, in Central America. And as a result, millions of people are desperately poor. Mexico has been subject to the drug cartels, U.S.-made weapons, and neoliberalism has wrecked Mexico. South and Central America have been devastated by free market neoliberalism. There's a lot of people who are desperately poor, and the drug gangs and all of that, and they're fleeing, and they need to get out of where they're at, and they're fleeing. And that's not a good situation at all. That is not a good situation. The same with Europe, right? There's many people from Libya, many people from parts of Africa, many people from the Middle East, from Syria, who because of U.S. foreign policy, because of international capitalism and free trade and neoliberalism, have been devastated economically and don't have a place to live. And that's not a good situation. It's not a good situation. It is not a good situation. Okay? And the way the conversation in the USA goes is like this. There are two sides to it. On the one hand, you have racism. All these people are terrorists. All these people are drug dealers. They're rapists. They're bad hombre. It's this awful, bigoted conversation. Not interested in having that conversation. Not good, not helpful. It's just bigotry, fear, fear-mongering, hate, unacceptable. But then, on the left, the left-wing response to it is, yay, this is the American dream. All these people are coming to a new life. It's amazing. Kumbaya. Wow, let's have a parade to welcome the refugees. Gee golly, it's so great. Look, all these people are starving and fleeing their homelands. Gee golly, it's great. I love it. It's amazing. I'm so happy about mass migration. That's what the liberals say. And don't pretend they don't say that. They do that. They do that. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Mass migration is one of the greatest crimes of capitalism. There's all these people who talk about capitalism. Communism killed millions of people, and they add up every person in every famine. Let's add up all the people who died because of capitalism and mass migration. Millions of people drowning in the Mediterranean. Millions of dead bodies every day, every single day along the U.S.-Mexico border. They find corpses, dead bodies of people who died trying to get into the country. You're going to tell me this is a good thing? You want me to throw a parade to celebrate mass migration and say, oh, it's so great these people can't live in their homes and are fleeing to the United States where they get treated like criminals and work for low pay? You really want me to celebrate that? You really want me to celebrate? That's like celebrating the Holocaust. That's what that is. If you're celebrating mass migration, that's what you're doing. And these liberals, the reason that they want to celebrate it and they just want to go, yay, mass migration, is they created it. They created it with their, revolution against Assad and their revolution against Gaddafi. They created this, right? With their revolution in Venezuela and their revolution, and their neoliberalism and their free market reforms and their free trade and their NAFTA, which we have to support because of global warming, They created this. The liberals created this. Republicans created it too, no problem. They created this. So they don't want to talk about the fact that they created a Holocaust. They created millions of people dying. They created this, and they don't want to have the conversation that needs to be had about this is what free market capitalism does to the world. This is what Western imperialism does to the world. They don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to have that conversation. They just don't want to have that conversation. So in order to avoid having a conversation they don't want to have, they do this stupid celebration of an atrocity. And if you don't go along with that celebration, you must be a Nazi. Well, no. What's going on? Anyone who lives near the U.S.-Mexico border will tell you that a lot of bad things are happening near the U.S.-Mexico border. And I mean, if I lived near the U.S.-Mexico border, I would probably be very afraid of MS-13. I'd be probably very afraid of the coyotes that smuggle people in. That doesn't mean I would support Trump. That doesn't mean I would support the wall. But I would have fears of that. And when liberals don't acknowledge any of those problems, when liberals pretend that everything's okay, it's all just great, that's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. And it needs to be said. I am saying what needs to be said. Malcolm X in a lot of his speeches, I'm not comparing myself to him. I'm a totally different person from a totally different background in a totally different time. But Malcolm X, in one of his speeches, in many of his speeches, you'll hear Malcolm X say, I know you all don't want to hear this, but. And that's a sign that someone is being real with you. When someone's pandering to you, just telling you what you want to hear, just telling you what's a trendy thing to say in that political circle, everyone's happy. But if someone's being real with you, they'll tell you what you don't want to hear. I'm being real with you right now. Open borders is not a good slogan. We have to change the conversation around mass migration. We have to recognize that what's happening is an atrocity of capitalism. That abolish prisons is not a good slogan. Abolish the police is not a good slogan. I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, what you don't want to hear. That's what Malcolm X used to do. That's what I'm doing to you. So there you go. That's my answer.